Hello, and welcome to day 4 of the 100-Day Project. We are in the acrylic ink window, and I'm starting this painting with some water to layer some acrylic inks on top of so that they can disperse into the water and create some soft edges. Yesterday in day 3, I talked about thinking I would start that painting replicating a larger work that I did using a bunch of water soluble graphite. And it didn't end up that way. It ended up as something different. So check that video out. That was day 3 if you want to see where that went. So today I thought I would once again try and replicate that painting. I'm just curious to see what it might look like with the figure in it. And I'll show you here in a little bit what that other painting looks like. So I'm making this cave type situation, and again, using water to really help soften those edges and let the inks disperse and do their yummy magic. I've got this ray of light that's coming in, which is bringing the viewer into the piece and hopefully creating a sense of distance as well. My palette is very limited. I'm using dioxazine purple by Liquitex, titanium white by Liquitex, the Daler Rowney brilliant yellow, and the Daler Rowney phthalo green. And that's it, just keeping it simple today and letting the inks do the work. So mixing in my super uber clean little plastic palette there, I do clean that out every day. I don't worry if there's paint that's stuck to it. It is what it is. So I use that one for acrylic inks mostly. And then I have other versions that I use for watercolor. And often I let the watercolor dry in them so that I don't have to worry about it and I can reuse that paint. So what I'm doing right now is using that glass dip pen to make some marks with some of the inks, but also to scratch into the paper. And I love doing that into wet paper because it creates these darker marks where the pigment settles. I just think it creates a really nice texture. So here I'm mixing some of that dioxazine purple with that phthalo green, and now I'm letting it dry. So while I'm letting it dry, here is that other piece, and it doesn't all quite fit inside the video. It's 12 by 16 on watercolor paper, and this was all with watercolor sticks and water-soluble graphite. And I started it kind of in abstract, and then it sort of became this sort of cave thing and sort of took on a life of its own. And I'm calling that one The Only Way Out Is Through. So kind of thinking about how we move through challenges and how we move through big, deep feelings. And the only way out is through. So that was the idea with that one. I thought it'd be kind of interesting as part of the series to do it with a figure. So that is what is coming here. I really love the color mixing that dioxazine purple along with that phthalo green creates a really pretty blue, like a dark navy blue. This is the beauty of using transparent colors. Every color I'm using today, with the exception of the titanium white, is transparent. So even if you're mixing colors that are opposite the color wheel, I mix the yellow and the purple quite a lot. It kind of creates this sort of earthy brownish green color. When you're mixing transparent colors, you can get some really beautiful colors. They might neutralize a little bit, but they're not going to get really muddy. Where you have a tendency to get mud often is when we have many, many, many pigments, but often opaque pigments. You can mix several transparent pigments together and you can get a really luscious, dark blackish color, dark grayish color, or dark brownish color, depending on the colors that you're using. And they're beautiful. So I really enjoy using transparent colors. And another reason why I really love working with inks, because a good portion of them are transparent. Here's my figure going in, sort of. I have a tendency to do these, I don't even know how to describe it, like kind of whimsical slash fantasy type figures. They're often cloaked, kind of gender ambiguous, and that's what I went with here. So here is a figure exiting. They're backlit, and so I'm making this figure very, very dark, and in a few minutes I'll add a bit of a halo to help it look like the sun is hitting. And I don't have a lot of detail in the figure. I do layer a couple of colors just to sort of build a little bit of visual depth if you get up close. If I were to spend more time on this piece, I spent maybe 15, 20 minutes, mostly because I did spend some time letting it dry. I needed to let that middle part dry so that I could get the figure in without it bleeding too much. And I let the background dry a little bit before I went in and did some dry brushing to give some of that texture in this area. So you see me fanning with the card. That's me trying to dry it. But if I were to spend more time on this painting, I might add just a little bit more variation in the figure itself. It's fairly kind of one dimensional and a little bit flat, a little bit just sort of uniformly dark. But that's if I were to go back in and spend a little bit more time, which I didn't have time to do today. And for this project, I'm not really worried about creating award-winning masterpieces. I'm really just exploring and having fun and seeing where things take me. Now, if I decide I really, really love this and want to turn it into something that I might show, then I might go back and add just a little bit of variation, or I might not. I really need to let it dry. I'll show you what it looks like when I'm finished, but I usually let work sit for a day or two to really dry out before I decide whether or not it's final. And often what I'm doing in those last stages is adjusting values. Acrylics, as I've mentioned, dry a little bit darker. Watercolor dries a little bit lighter. And so you never really know what you have until it's had a chance to sit. So I may make some adjustments. I may not. I don't know. Time will tell. But I really am liking the shadow. I like the brightness and the contrast to the figure. Here, you'll notice I'm really pushing on that brush hard. Again, why I don't invest in really expensive brushes. Let it dry, came back, wanted to touch up around the head a little bit where some of that ink smeared because I wasn't patient and was adding some of that halo and some of that purplish green bluish color kind of smeared there. So I'm just going in with some white in a couple of layers to touch that up. But I love the dry brush and the textural marks. At this point, I was looking at it and I thought, I think they need another arm. When I first drew it, I didn't have that second arm, thinking maybe they were in motion and the other arm was so far forward you didn't really see it in the light. And then I thought, let me go ahead and add another arm in there. So I went ahead and did that and used that glass pen to help me sketch out where I thought that might go. And then I adjust it a little bit, adjust the width and the length a little bit to try and give it a little more believable proportion. That's what's going on here, and adding a little bit, I'm actually layering a little bit of that phthalo green on top to try and give that figure some depth. I don't want to add too much lightness to it because it is backlit, and I want to keep that really strong contrast with the light. And I love the dark, dark, dark and the light, light, light. Adding a little bit more depth to the shadow here. Because I'm using a lot of water, it's drying a little bit lighter than we see than when it's wet. So again, layers are really important in giving things time to dry. So here we go. Here it is. I love the dry brushing texture. You can see a little bit of a variation in the figure with the different colors, the scratchy marks with the glass pen. Super fun, quick, simple, and I kind of love it. So there we go, day 4. Thank you again for joining me. Please tag me if you're doing this yourself. And as always, I wish you much love, joy, and magic. Thanks. Bye.